Random person on the street accuses me of kidnapping 6 kids. This happened a few years ago when I was 20 and working in youth and kids care. I was doing a social year after school where people can take a look into a job and actually work full-time hours for a year for basically no pay at all. I got $300 a month, but some actually get nothing. Usually, you have someone else help you with a lot of things, and you are not the person taking responsibility, even though over the year you gain some. Well, I was in a youth center, which is basically a center where young kids and teens can come in to relax after school, but we also offered first contact for abuse and such things. The place where I was only had me and my boss working there, so naturally I had to do way more than other people working in 300 to 400 employee companies, and also took a lot more responsibility than in hindsight I should have. So we already had enough hours to work on weekends and stuff, which was not mandatory for me, but I still did because the weekends were the real fun part of it. So during school breaks, we also offered a morning care for younger kids, age 6 through 10. Since working from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. isn't possible all the time, me and my boss split the time, and we're planning morning events so my boss would do them, while I would take care of the kids on regular mornings. We also had 2 younger sweet girls, age 17 and 18, helping us out as a small part-time job, and they didn't have a license or anything for taking care of kids, so me and my boss were always in charge. At around the last quarter of my year, my boss had some problems with the people renting his house, so he called me the day before and asked if I could cover the morning for him, for an extra day, which was no big deal for me. We actually had planned to go to the city with the kids to go to a museum and eat some ice cream, so he told me I could either cancel the event or just do it since he trusted me enough. This was kind of a big thing for me, since usually you didn't get that much responsibility, and it showed I was trusted enough. Plus, I also love this kind of work, so I just went ahead with the event as usual. The parents were all okay with me telling them that I'm doing the event, so everything went fine. We drove there with 11 people in 2 cars and went to the museum. I was really happy with how everything went, and we didn't have much going bad or kids misbehaving or anything, just the usual kids stuff. That was until we got to the cafe to eat some ice cream. We were sitting outside just eating the ice cream when a lady approaches us. I did not see her immediately as I was busy paying for the ice cream, but one of the teenage workers, who we'll call Sweet Girl, later told me she just came up, took a look at our group, and asked one of the younger kids where his parents were, to which the kid responded that they were at work. She then turned to Sweet Girl 1 and demanded to know what they were doing here, why she was alone with all those kids, and why they were not in school. Well, Sweet Girl 1 and 2 explained that they're part of a youth care program and the kids are on summer break. I never asked how the conversation turned out, but when I got to the table, Entitled Lady demanded to speak with the boss of the group, to which I turned to her and asked, "Excuse me, I'm responsible for the group, what's the matter?" The lady just looks at me and then snaps, "There is no way you are responsible here. I am calling the police right now. Someone this young can't take care of so many children." She said this in a very unpolite manner. So now I get this really bad feeling, and I signal to Sweet Girl to move the kids away and out of hearing range, as they could get words from Entitled Lady. I still try to be polite and say, "I'm sorry, but I indeed work here. We went to the museum today and are just preparing to get back to the center so that the moms can pick up their children. I would also appreciate it if you could watch your manners as there are children nearby." Well, I thought that would end the conversation, but no. Entitled Lady gets this ridiculous thought in her head and screeches, not loud but in a really annoying tone. "I don't believe you. With your face, you must be a pedo, and you have kidnapped these children. The Sweet Girls are probably your accomplices. I'm calling the police." My eyes widen in shock as I realize what she just did. This was a serious accusation, and even though I'm obviously not a pedo, even the accusation can destroy people's careers in our field. I try again and say, "Listen, lady, I work at that place, and you can call them anytime. I am also an adult. What you are doing is slander, and I hope you'll leave us alone now." She already had her hands on her phone and told me that a police officer can decide that. At this point, various people have stopped and looked, but most thought it wasn't a big deal since no one was yelling or anything. At this point, I know I should just wait and call my boss to tell him about the incident, and also call the parents to let them know we'll be late, and I can drop off their kids at their house if needed. Well, the officer comes up 10 minutes later and asks what's going on, to which entitled lady now screams in the middle of the street that the two sweet girls and I should be arrested for kidnapping these 6 children. By now, a few people are standing around as the officer walks up to me and asks what's going on. I tell him where I work and that the lady has been harassing me and the kids for almost 20 minutes now, including calling me a pedo and a kidnapper. The officer looks a bit uneasy and asks me if he can call my community's office, as this is a community service, so I am employed by the community, as well as see my ID. I comply, and one phone call later, it's all settled. The lady just tries to storm off after hearing this, mumbling about how the parents are irresponsible for keeping their children in my care. This was time for Awesome Mom's appearance. She apparently was in the city when we called her, and decided to come to the rescue and found us just at this moment. She stops the lady in her tracks and scolds her on all the stuff she did, as well as telling her all the stuff I did with her kid. Her kid was on every care program we had. This is not a bad thing, as we actually do a lot of education and kids love it, and we knew each other quite well. The officer seeing this is now slightly amused and asked if there was anything else. I say yes, and ask him if there's any grounds for me to press charges against the lady for slander, to which he happily applied because with all the bystanders hearing what the lady said, there certainly was grounds to press charges. I work here. Yeah, breaking and entering. Obligatory, not a native English speaker. This happened to me a few years back. I worked as a junior facility manager at one of the office and conference buildings of our church. I often ran late shifts, preparing for the next day, closing down, and securing the building for the night. Since I was just in facility management, and when it was late, nobody was there anyway, I usually just wore some black army clothes to work, since they are comfortable and robust, as well as army boots and an old field cap. There were multiple entries I had to close down at night and make sure nobody was left in the building. Finally, I'd make my last round around the building, testing if every door was locked, since sometimes the locking mechanism wouldn't snap properly. Unfortunately, the building was in the city center, between the town hall and a police station, so it was just a matter of time before I got to know some of my city's finest. So 2 officers are leaving their car when they see some guy in old army clothes pulling vigorously at the doors of the office across the street and feel like investigating. "Good evening, might I ask what you're doing?" said the cop. I'm a bit annoyed and I say, "My job, and I'd like to be gone in about 5 minutes, so..." Yeah, after an exhausting day, I just wanted to get home, and I didn't feel like being delayed by anyone. Also, I'm in Europe, so I had no worry about the cops using excessive force or being a bit brash to them. Of course, in hindsight, this was not the best possible answer. And one of the officers says, "Well, we would appreciate it if you'd refrain from doing your work in front of our police station." I'm very much missing what the police officer is getting at, thinking this to be some kind of harassment, while pulling again at the door, which indeed opens. And I say, "Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I'll be away as soon as I've taken care of this." At that moment, I reached for my pocket to get the keys, and found myself harshly interrupted. "Hands where we can see them, step away from the door." I freeze, finally realizing the situation, and I say, "Now I get it, sorry, I do work here." It seems like my looks weren't too convincing. "I don't think so. Are you daft? We are literally standing right beside you." The sheer audacity. "At least we just have to cross the street," he says while grabbing my arm and shaking his head. "No sir, I can't. I do indeed work here, and I've got a..." "Yeah, your work looks quite like breaking and entering, so if you just come with us." By now, I was annoyed, pissed, and rather desperate. It was past my shift, and I couldn't leave with 2 open doors, the last one I would lock on my way out. And this late, they might just keep me overnight at the station and check out my testimonial the next morning. And I say, "So you're about to just leave this door unlocked and open for everyone else to walk in?" The 2 officers raise an eyebrow and one says to the other, "That's right, would you go around to the main entrance and call their facility management?" So an officer walks away, and sure enough, about a minute later, my work phone starts ringing. And the officer with me says, "Take your phone slowly and turn it off." By then, the other officer returns, cell phone to his ear, trying to reach anyone, as I take mine and end the call. And the officer on the phone says, "They hung up, I'll try again." Some seconds later, my cell starts ringing again. "May I?" I said. The officer, totally oblivious, just gives me an annoyed nod. He is clearly too occupied by his colleague trying to get someone on the line so they could finally leave, and doesn't put two and two together. I accept the call and say, "Good evening, officer. Might I finally lock the damn door as I was about to do before you interrupted me?" They were rather friendly after that, and even asked me if I'd like a ride home, since the whole thing delayed me past the last metro train. In the end, they were quite nice guys.